It was early morning. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon, and I sat with a man named Harold, 68 years old. He stared down at the floor, fidgeting with his wedding ring, not because he didn't love his wife, but because he didn't recognize himself anymore. "I still want to," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "But it just doesn't happen like it used to." I've had that conversation hundreds of times. Different names, different faces, but always the same ache behind their eyes. The silence men carry around their changing bodies is louder than they realize. If you're over 60 and mornings feel different, if that firm, natural confidence you once had seems to be slipping away, you're not imagining it. But I need you to hear this clearly. It may not be your age. It may be your breakfast. I'm Dr. Thomas Leighton. I've spent over 40 years listening to men veterans, retired teachers, steel workers, fathers, grandfathers, men who gave everything, only to wake up one day feeling like something vital was quietly slipping through their fingers. I'm not here to sell you false hope, but I am here to walk beside you with something real, because what I've learned after decades of treating men like you is both surprising and empowering. Some of the most common vegetables marketed as healthy for breakfast may be sabotaging your manhood. That's not a scare tactic. That's a pattern I've seen play out again and again. These foods, innocent as they seem, can throw your hormones off balance, trigger inflammation, and choke the very blood flow you depend on for vitality. We've been told for years, eat your veggies. And yes, vegetables are essential, but not all of them. And not in every context, especially not for older men navigating a sensitive, shifting internal chemistry. There are 7 breakfast foods I've seen repeatedly lower testosterone, cause fatigue, and interfere with blood flow. You don't need to memorize them. I'll walk you through each one gently. But more importantly, I'll show you what to eat instead. Because healing doesn't come from fear. It comes from knowledge. And if this message already feels like it's brushing against something true for you, quietly type 1 in the comments. If it doesn't yet, that's okay, type 0 and let me know what you're still searching for. Either way, thank you for listening. Let's begin not with a warning, but with a story. Gerald was a retired school teacher, 68, kind-hearted and faithful. He came to me not because of pain, but because of a fading spark. "I still love her," he told me, "but my body isn't showing up anymore." We examined everything: medications, stress levels, sleep. But what stood out was breakfast: soy milk in his coffee, tofu scramble, a handful of edamame. All of it sounded healthy. It was plant-based, light, recommended by blogs and food shows. But inside his body, soy was mimicking estrogen. Phytoestrogens, compounds naturally found in soy, act like estrogen once metabolized. For a man in his 60s, that can mean declining testosterone and dwindling performance quietly, steadily, invisibly. After just 2 weeks of removing soy and replacing it with hormone-friendly fats, a few eggs, some greens, and zinc-rich seeds, Gerald looked at me with a different kind of confidence. "Doc," he said, "I feel like I came home to myself." That is what this is about. Not miracles, not perfection, but coming home to the version of you that still lives beneath the noise and fog. Now, soy isn't the only food that does this. Another vegetable, far more elegant in appearance, carries a hidden cost. Not hormonal, but inflammatory. I'm talking about eggplant. Carl was 72 sharp, funny, and full of life. But he felt off. His labs were normal, his medication stable. Still, something wasn't clicking. Then we looked at his diet, specifically breakfast. His wife, loving and health-conscious, had started making Mediterranean-inspired meals. Olive oil, grilled eggplant, tomatoes, goat cheese. It sounded like a vacation on a plate, but it was hiding something deeper. Eggplants belong to the nightshade family. In sensitive individuals, especially older adults with creeping inflammation, they can subtly aggravate the system. The arteries that matter most for performance? They're small, and inflammation closes them off first. We swapped eggplant for nitrate-rich greens and foods that fight inflammation, not feed it. A few weeks later, Carl smiled and said, "Breakfast feels like breakfast again." That's the power of knowing, the power of adjusting. And it doesn't stop there. Let's talk about tomatoes, specifically the canned kind. Franklin was trying to do everything right. He had ditched sugar, added more vegetables, and started his mornings with scrambled eggs and canned tomato salsa. But he felt tired. His morning strength? Gone. His motivation? Thinning. The culprit wasn't the tomatoes, it was the can. Many canned goods are lined with BPA, a chemical that mimics estrogen and lowers testosterone. And because tomatoes are acidic, they leach BPA more than most foods. When Franklin switched to fresh or glass-jarred tomatoes, his energy returned. It was that simple. His body wasn't broken, it was being blocked. If you're still with me, if these stories resonate, go ahead and type a quiet 1 below. Not for me, for you. To acknowledge that your health matters, that you're paying attention, that you're still in this. Because you are. And next, we'll talk about a vegetable that tastes like nostalgia, but may be quietly draining your circulation, one salty bite at a time. Pickled vegetables. Crisp, tangy, and for many of us, wrapped in memory. Maybe your mother served them with eggs on a quiet Sunday morning. Maybe they remind you of wartime rations, a lunch break at the firehouse, or your grandmother's careful canning in the kitchen. These are foods of tradition, of habit, and for many, of comfort. But tradition, while beautiful, doesn't always serve the body well, especially after 60. Warren, a retired firefighter, was a man of steel on the outside. 70 years old, sharp, fit, proud of how he'd kept himself together. But he sat in my office with a distant look in his eyes. "I'm doing everything I was taught to do," he said. "But something's gone quiet inside me." He was referring, of course, to his intimacy, to his strength, to those firm, unshakable mornings that once arrived without question, now replaced by doubt. As we looked at his diet, one detail jumped out. "I always start with a couple pickled beets or cucumbers," he said. Good for gut health, I heard. The truth? Not at that time of day. Not for a man over 60. Pickled vegetables are often saturated with sodium and preserved in acidic solutions that constrict your blood vessels. And while your heart may adjust over time, your smallest arteries, including the ones responsible for erections, do not adapt. They tighten, they resist, and they fade into stillness. When Warren made the switch to potassium-rich vegetables like roasted sweet potato slices or steamed asparagus, his mornings began to shift. "It's like the lights are coming back on," he told me. Not overnight, but steadily. I've seen it too many times to call it coincidence. But salt isn't the only silent thief hiding in plain sight. Next, we need to talk about onions. Raw onions. Eaten first thing in the morning, often with good intentions, but bad timing. Douglas, 74, had read an article online claiming that raw onions increase testosterone. And technically, there's some truth to that. Onions contain antioxidants that support circulation and hormone health. But context, as always, is king. Douglas had been eating raw red onion slices every morning on an empty stomach. No eggs, no fats, just onions, toast, and water. What followed was subtle, but real. Gas, bloating, a sluggish heaviness in his gut. And then, slowly, his energy dipped. His drive faded. His sense of masculinity dimmed like a light losing power. When we explored the issue, the answer became clear. Raw onions, particularly when eaten alone, irritate the digestive lining. This irritation disrupts nutrient absorption and the nutrients most affected? Zinc, B vitamins, selenium, all critical for testosterone and strong sexual function. His body was trying. His heart was in the right place. But it was like trying to build a fire with wet wood. Once we moved the onions to his dinner plate, cooked gently alongside zinc-rich protein, the result was near immediate. "Turns out," he chuckled, "my gut's smarter than the internet." That brings us to a vegetable that's been glorified for decades, spinach. And yes, it's good for you, but only when handled right. Steve, 69, a former Navy man, was proud of his discipline. "I eat clean," he told me. Every morning, he'd microwave eggs and spinach, steaming it down until it was soft and dark. His intentions were noble, but his energy was fading. His joints ached, and the spark that once connected him to his wife, dimming. The culprit was simple: overcooked spinach. When spinach is microwaved or heavily steamed, It releases oxalates compounds that bind with calcium and zinc in your gut, making them unusable. And if there's one mineral every man needs for testosterone, it's zinc. Steve's labs showed significant depletion. We switched to lightly sautéed spinach, still vibrant, still nourishing, but not overcooked. Paired it with pumpkin seeds and olive oil. 2 weeks later, he was back with a smirk. "Feels like my body's on my team again," he said. That shift from confusion to confidence is everything. Now, let's talk about a particularly tricky one: garlic. Garlic has long been praised for its health benefits. It lowers blood pressure, supports the immune system, and improves circulation. It's been used in ancient medicine and modern clinics alike, but not every form is safe, especially not for men over 60, and especially not raw on an empty stomach. John, a retired engineer, told me he'd been swallowing a clove of raw garlic every morning just like the article said. "Supposed to be nature's Viagra, right?" he asked. But instead of better intimacy, he got burning reflux, bloating, and constant fatigue. Raw garlic, while powerful, can irritate the stomach lining, spike acidity, and disrupt nutrient absorption. And when your gut is compromised, your hormones follow. We replaced it with aged garlic extract, taken after a meal, and the change was profound. "Doc," he said, "I feel 10 years younger, and my wife noticed too." Now let me pause here. If you've been nodding along, if you see yourself in these stories, then please quietly type 1 below. Not for validation, but for acknowledgement, for choosing to listen to your body, to honor the version of you that still wants to rise. Because these 7 foods, soy, eggplant, canned tomatoes with BPA, pickled vegetables, raw onions, overcooked spinach, and raw garlic, they may sound harmless. But for a man over 60, they can be the difference between quiet decline and quiet revival. The good news? You don't need to memorize all of this. You just need to remember one thing: your body still listens to what you feed it. Every bite is either a whisper of healing or a withdrawal of strength. In the next part, we'll talk about what to eat instead. Foods that nourish, restore, and invite vitality back into your life. Because it's not just about avoiding harm, it's about building strength. And strength, my friend, is something you still have. When Robert first came to see me, he was 71, thin frame, silver hair, sharp mind. But behind his calm demeanor was something heavier. He paused before speaking, then finally said, "Doc, I don't want to be 20 again. I just want to feel like myself again." That single sentence carried so much, not longing for youth, but for dignity, for connection, for energy that rises naturally in the morning and doesn't require coaxing or explanation, for the feeling of being in your body, not just carried by it. So we started where so much begins: breakfast. No supplements, no special powders or expensive routines, just food that worked with his body, not against it. His plate was simple: 2 soft-boiled eggs for protein and cholesterol, the kind that helps build testosterone, not damage your heart. A few slices of avocado, rich in monounsaturated fats that support hormones and circulation. Some lightly steamed broccoli, gentle on the gut, rich in fiber and natural detoxifiers. A small handful of pumpkin seeds, one of the best natural sources of zinc. Nothing fancy, but everything intentional. Within 2 weeks, Robert came back with more color in his cheeks. "You know," he said, "I'd forgotten what it felt like to wake up ready. Not just sexually, emotionally, physically, just present." That's the word I keep coming back to: presence. Because for many men after 60, the issue isn't just biology. It's that you stop feeling connected to yourself. You start shrinking your expectations. You chalk things up to age. But what if it's not aging? What if it's a quiet withdrawal from the conversation between your mind and body? Breakfast is where that conversation begins. So what else can you put on your plate? Beetroot juice, just a small glass in the morning, is one of the best natural ways to boost nitric oxide production. That means better blood flow, not just to your heart, but to the vessels that matter most during intimacy. It's been used by athletes for years. But in my experience, it works even better for men over 60 because the body is more responsive when it's been quiet for a while. Pomegranate tea is another powerful ally packed with antioxidants that support circulation and reduce inflammation. Warm it gently in the morning and let it be part of a slow, intentional routine. not rushed, not forced. Because this isn't just about food. It's about remembering that you're still worth taking care of. Too many men over 60 begin to fade, not because their bodies are broken, but because they stop believing they're allowed to feel good again. They wake up, pour a cup of coffee, nibble on a bland breakfast, check the news, and slowly lower the volume on their own vitality. But it doesn't have to be that way. You're still here. Your body still listens. And every choice, especially the ones you make in the morning, sends a message. So here's what I want you to remember. It's not about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Avoid the foods we talked about, the soy, the BPA-laced cans, the raw onions and garlic on an empty stomach, the overcooked spinach, the pickled vegetables drowning in sodium, not because you're afraid, but because you're aware. Choose foods that say to your body, I haven't given up on you. Because your body hasn't given up on you. And if you need proof, let me tell you about Benjamin. He was 78, widowed, quiet, kept mostly to himself. When he came in, he told me he wasn't looking for advice about sex or testosterone. I just want to enjoy my mornings, he said. I want to get out of bed. We looked at his diet. Cereal, cold toast, black coffee. I asked him to try something new, something simple. A hot breakfast, 1 egg, a bit of smoked salmon, a slice of sourdough, some sautéed greens, a pinch of sea salt, and a warm mug of pomegranate tea. 2 weeks later, he showed up in a crisp shirt. I've started reading again in the mornings, he said, and I called my daughter. We hadn't spoken in months. That's the kind of ripple effect these changes can have. Not just in your blood, but in your relationships, your sense of agency, your hope. Because vitality isn't just about erections. It's about engagement with your life, your identity, your world. And if no one's told you this recently, let me be the one to say it. You're not past your prime. You're not invisible. And you're not broken. I've watched men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s reclaim their energy, their intimacy, and their self-respect, not through gimmicks, but through quiet, committed choices. Yes, it takes time. Yes, it takes patience, but it's worth it. Because the alternative to give up, to fade, to settle, that's not you. Not really. That's just the voice of doubt talking louder than the voice of truth. So let me end with this. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, ask yourself one question. What message am I sending to my body with this meal? Let it be a message of care. Let it say, I'm still in this. I still matter. Because you do. If this message spoke to you, if it reminded you of something you've been missing or gave you hope for something new, please consider sharing it. Not for attention, but for connection. Share it with a friend, a brother, a neighbor who may be carrying the same silent questions. Leave a comment if you feel called. Even just a word or two. I read them. I carry them with me, and they help guide what I share next. And if you believe in this mission to give men over 60 honest, compassionate health advice without hype, feel free to support this channel with a small donation. It helps me reach more men who've been told to stay quiet. But whether you donate or not, thank you for listening, for showing up, for staying curious. You are not done. You are returning. Stay strong, stay connected, and may tomorrow morning be the first of many that feel like yours again.